right, we are live back on Policy and Culture. As usual, we have another very special esteemed guest. And the whole purpose, again, of our platform is to do the intersection between policy and culture and what that means from the high level, behind the scenes of public policy and local power, but also how it impacts our culture, how we can make sure we're educating and steering the conversation for our communities and for our culture. So we have someone today that not only has made history on a local level, but is doing a lot of work in a very new, very clean, and a very renewable industry. We have the very lovely Miss Retha Fernandez of Community Offshore Wind that focuses on workforce development and equity. So Retha, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate the time. And of course, Dan Lloyd and my co-host,
Andrew Ayodiji.
And so normally we like to have these conversations. We want to learn more about the person and how you got into the position and the industry that you are in now. But I do think it's important to kind of educate people a little bit about what the green economy is and what is happening. This is something that's been going on for a few decades, but in the last, I would say, probably 5 years, especially in New York, there's been a huge emphasis. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Can you talk a little bit about the industry first and just exactly what green economy is?
Well, I'll tell you, offshore wind, which is the part of the energy sector that I'm in, is focused on providing clean, renewable energy for the United States. And because of the Biden administration Infrastructure Reduction Act and the bipartisan Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure bill, there's money now for the country to reach its renewable energy goals. And so that money is also what New York State is using for them to reach their renewable energy goals. So like you said, multi-billion-dollar industry. So what does this mean? This means that we're going to have clean energy. The United States is going to do it. New York State is going to do it. The reason why I'm so passionate about it is because how can we make sure that Black and brown folks can take advantage of the opportunities that the industry is going to bring?
But what exactly, so we have a number of different initiatives that we do with the different organizations we have. Drew runs Clean Energy for the Culture. We have a lot of clean energy programming under minority millennials. I like to reference as energy is in general, it's all around us. Right now there's energy in this space, there's energy on anybody that's listening. And we like to talk, when we talk about basketball, if you get into altercation or you're arguing, especially if it's somebody you don't like, it's bad energy, right? There's a disconnect between the two people. Good energy is, if maybe you can apologize or say, listen, my bad, let's get over it, give her a hug. And when we teach the kids that, we explain that that's what good energy and bad energy is. And do you like bad energy? No one likes bad energy. No one really likes to get into a fight. Even if you get into a fight afterwards, it's a very annoying feeling. It's an uncomfortable feeling. That's fossil fuels, right? Clean energy is that giving a pound, give her a hug, you make up, you get to the next play. Most of the time after you get into a bad fight or something like that, sometimes those are your friends. And so you produce good energy from that. And that's when we talk about offshore wind. And that's how we explain the difference of the two. But can you talk a little bit about the transition from fossil fuels into clean energy? Because like you said, offshore wind is one of the sectors. You got offshore wind, you got solar that's been around for hydrogen. Mm-hmm. You have onshore that's been around for quite some time. Mm-hmm. But we're really just catching up in America.
We are. Yeah. Right. This industry has been in Europe for decades? And that's why in the U.S.-based companies partner with European-based companies because they know how to do it. So U.S., we have the relationships, we have, the on-the-ground knowledge, but we don't necessarily have the knowledge of how to build a wind farm. That's all in Europe.
So is that the developers or is that just people coming over? The developers are from there? Or?
Developers are from there.
Okay. So that could be a reason why it's not many developers that are tapping into that region like that. Ooh.
Because they don't know. Yeah. So Community Offshore Wind is a joint venture between National Grid, which is in the New York, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, and RWE, which is a German-based company. So RWE has the engineering knowledge of building an offshore wind farm, and National Grid has our expertise is in generation and transmission and also the local knowledge. So the two together is supposed to make a wonderful project. But I want to know, how do the kids take that when you talk about the good energy and bad energy? Do they like get it?
I mean, it's not just kids that we be kicking it to. The kids get it too, but it's really more so for the adult demographic, because they be the ones that their energy be off the most. So it's kind of, explaining that to them, like specifically through sports, because it's sometimes like uncontrollable. So we got to tell them like, yo, listen, this is leaving like a false narrative on a situation. Even if you get into a heated argument with somebody, give them a pound afterwards, hug them. It just leaves a better space. That energy is just clean. So, that's how we kind of, go about it. The kids,
clean.
The kids are really receptive to it, because it becomes like a mediation thing, and we like to put kids in leadership positions to where like they're mediating a situation. They understand what they're doing. They understand like, yo, this situation here is not conducive for nobody around here. This is bad energy. This is fogging up the environment. Let's talk about it. Let's have a dialogue and move forward. That's clean energy. So we pushing clean energy for the culture.
Also, in perspective of what they do. So if they're not playing basketball, 9 times out of 10 they're playing video games. And so you break it down.
My 17-year-old.
Fossil fuel is not sustainable to keep playing video games in 30 or 40 years. Like, it's just not healthy for our environment. So we try to tell them, listen, just imagine if you're trying to play the video games and we don't have enough energy literally in our household to even empower or power up your video game system, let alone be able to have electricity, lights in the household. Like, we're going backwards. This is why we need to transition into clean energy. In a way, if you take 1,000, let's say 10,000 jump shots, and you plug that up to you as a person, you would be producing somewhat of enough energy to maybe get a light bulb in your house. So we need to do that times 1,000,000 to produce the much clean energy that we need to keep this country and really the globe sustainable. This is how urgent and important it is. But a lot of people are not aware of what fossil fuels are.
And it's like a burgeoning demographic. We do a lot of work together personally, but we see that you've been kind of like really getting that information out into the communities, doing different things. Like, how are y'all going about making sure like our communities are getting this information and really understanding what clean energy is?
Okay, before I answer that question, which you will probably have to repeat for me. But I mean, what you're saying, there's a whole conversation now in the energy industry about computing power and the computing power that's going to be needed to power data centers, because the data centers are needed because of AI. Amazon is like, what did Amazon say? Amazon Web Services, the largest corporate purchaser of renewable energy, Amazon. And so Amazon is already in renewable energy. In the UK, for example, they're estimating by 2027, like the amount of computing power that's going to be needed for all this AI stuff is going to be more energy than what the Netherlands uses. So it's like, our kids, our people need to be in it and need to understand it. And so the energy sector is more than just clean energy. And this is reminding me of another thing. There's a lot of innovation available in the energy sector. So National Grid, we have a lot of people don't know about it, but a part of the business is called National Grid Partners, and they invest in startups. They're like National Grid's sort of like in-house accelerator. And there's so much innovation that's going to be needed for the clean energy industry, because there's so many problems that we don't have the answers to yet. And so when I talk to young kids and I talk to them about getting into offshore wind, I'm like, it's not only wind turbine technicians or whatever. There's other parts of the industry that you can get into, other problems that we need solving. Like, we don't have the answers fully for battery storage. We don't have the answers for how we're going to decommission these wind turbines in a renewable way in 30 years from now. And so our kids now, and people in college or PhD students, whatever, they're going to be working on these problems.
Yeah, and it's policy and culture, right? So you mentioned the Biden administration. What happens if you get elected officials that are not too keen on clean energy? How can this whole thing be stopped?
So they could make it, the federal government can make it tremendously hard for us to get projects permitted, or they can just stop the funding of clean energy and continue to fund fossil fuel companies. I personally think that there's too much money in the industry for that, like, to really happen. But that being said, we need to vote, because if you care about the climate, if you care about breathing clean air, drinking clean water, a lot of youth do care about the climate. And there's even in the hip hop movement, there's like environmental justice, climate justice action happening now. And if we don't get involved and if we don't vote, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I was just actually.
And I don't mean to be like fearful, because that's not me, but honestly, I don't know what's going to happen.
But why would an elected official at this point not want to shift into more clean energy usage? What would be the point? Is this purely greed, money?
Yes. Yes, for the people. Yes. That's it.
I was just listening to a post. I sent it to Drew, actually, and it said that 2 out of 3 majority minority communities are home of landfills. And I was just thinking, man, we got a landfill actually right here between Wyandanch and West Babylon. That's ironic.
We sure do. And a lot of us don't pay attention. So, like, on Long Island, we have a couple of environmental justice groups, like LIPC and Blarg out in Bellport, but not really. It's not really a conversation that we're happening. And, you know, when I worked at the Urban League and we did the State of Black Long Island report, Black Long Islanders are most likely to live in areas of high air pollution, most likely to have asthma, most likely to not have access to transportation. So, I mean, it's all so many intersections. So, NYSERDA or New York State calls these communities disadvantaged communities, and offshore wind developers have to invest certain, like, to the tens of millions of dollars in these communities. And these communities overlap between typically Black and brown, typically environmental justice communities, typical, low wealth, low credit access, food deserts. I mean, it's all up because of how the United States has been planned. Urban planning, I should say.
You mentioned Urban League. So let's take this reverse back. Let's go back a little bit. Talk about Retha Fernandez. How did you get to this position? You did a lot of work in many different industries. So just give us your journey. You're from Long Island, no?
I was born in Brooklyn.
When did you move to Long Island?
I moved to Long Island when I was 13. Okay, but I still say I'm from
Brooklyn. So yeah, you can definitely get Brooklyn. Some people move to Long Island, move out of Brooklyn, and 1 year old. I'm from Brooklyn.
No, but I live most of my life on Long Island, right? But I spent most of my career in information technology, and then in corporate America. And then I got burnt out. And then I went on a spiritual journey and I learned how to meditate. And then I started my own business where I teach meditation. So I don't really do it a lot anymore, but
before that, where part of Long Island, where did you move to? Where part of Long Island are you from?
Freeport.
Okay. You went to Freeport High School?
I went to Freeport High School. I was a lady double.
And what made you want to jump into, what college you go to?
Rutgers University.
Ah, that's right. Okay, Rutgers. Yeah. Shout out to Rutgers.
So my college journey, that's a whole other. How much time we got? That's a whole other podcast.
What was the two dudes' name there? Because I worked for them actually I graduated from Rutgers, Newark, and then I worked for Newark Housing.
Randall,
BCT
Pinkett,
Partners.
and Lawrence Hibbert.
Yeah. They went to Rutgers with you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they were doing their thing.
Yes, Randall and Lawrence. But when I knew them, they were Randy and Larry. But anyway, that's a whole other. Though I love them. They're phenomenal, doing so much good work in New Jersey, too. And
so you jumped into technology and corporate. How long did you do the corporate world for?
A long time. And then in 2016 was when I started to get more involved locally in politics, because the election happened and Trump won, and I was like, this is ridiculous. What can I do locally to have us, change the outcomes of future elections. And so I got involved in some local, all those pop-up groups were starting in 2016. And so the group that I was a part of was in CD2 to flip that district back from red to blue, which we still haven't done successfully. But anyway, that's another story. And so that's when I started working for the Urban League.
Got it.
That's when I met Teresa Sanders, and she was doing this, the State of Black Long Island Council, and she asked for volunteers, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. And then she needed a project director, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. And so I ran the project for 2 years, and then that's when I met Steve Ballone. And when he needed a chief diversity officer, they reached out to me.
And that was historic, right? That was the first chief DI officer across the region, if I'm correct, right? On Long Island?
Definitely on Long Island.
On Long Island, yeah. Nassau,
probably even New York State, because he passed the resolution. I was installed in 2019. So this was before the pandemic. And then after George Floyd was murdered, all these other counties started to create these roles, chief diversity officer roles. So I think he might have been the first.
Got it. And what does that role look like in a local government?
So my responsibility was to have the county government, so Suffolk County, fourth largest county in New York State, 10,000 employees, have the employee demographic reflect the demographic of Suffolk County. So at the time, the county workforce was like 87% white, but the county population was like about 67% white. So there's a disparity there, right? And so my job was to develop a strategy for us to change those numbers. So he was in office for 4 years.
Who's this? You took
Steve Ballone
Okay.
was in office 4 years. There's no way I was going to do this in 4 years, but at least what we could do is create a strategy, lay the groundwork for future administrations to do it.
Is that role still? Is there still a role now in Suffolk County?
It's still on the books. Is it filled? No.
No.
Is anybody doing DEI work in the county? There was the young woman that worked with me, Evita Marrow. You guys know Evita. So she's still there as a DEI program manager. But the role is quite different from what we were doing.
DEI at large has taken a huge hit in the last year and a half, 2 years. How do you feel? I think even Microsoft, I don't want to say the CEO, but it was one of the high C-suite representatives, cut off the DEI program. I think he was actually a brother. I think he was black. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, all of them. I mean,
what do you think about that?
I think that it
didn't even last 5 years.
After George Floyd was murdered, I think that we did not do DEI in the right way. So many people would say, oh, because you want to hire more Black or Hispanic people or more women, you are going to change the criteria, change the qualifications. Some people did do that, but that's not how you do DEI.
What is DEI for those that are listening that may not know?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Mm-hmm. And some people did DEI with trainings, right? Like anti-racist training, all those books about how unconscious bias and the psychology behind why we behave the way we behave. And so white people kind of rejected that, right? They pushed back against that. Because are you telling me that the way I was raised is wrong? Are you telling me the way I think is wrong? Are you telling me the person who I am is wrong and is bad? And that wasn't an argument that DEI practitioners could win. Now, in the workplace, if you focus on how you can close gaps in access, how you can use data and measures to help you change the numbers of representation in your workforce, and then how you training, DEI training that's related to business outcomes and not talking about how to be an anti-racist at work. Like, I just felt like that was not the way for us to go about it. And every time I read about a company pulling back on their DEI initiatives, it's those kinds of things.
Yeah.
The employee resource groups or the affinity groups, they're stopping those too. Those I think are important because those groups help create community in whatever organization that you're in. And you need to be or want to feel like you're a part of something. And so the Black affinity groups or the Hispanic affinity groups or the LGBT groups are needed for an individual worker employee to feel included and like they belong in the workplace. And that doesn't have to fall under a DEI umbrella. That really should fall under HR as part of like just personal and professional development, in my opinion. So I don't think we did it right. And so when I was at the county, we did programming to build awareness, cultural awareness about different cultures in the workplace. But I really focused on our outreach and recruitment strategy so that we can build a broader pool of candidates for hiring managers to hire from. And Long Island, because we are so segregated, it kind of made it easy for us to target our outreach because we know who lives in what zip codes, right? So we kind of took advantage of the way Long Island was built in order for us to do our outreach.
You mentioned before, I'm going to go back to Urban League and the program you're running. I know the program that you're running, but can you talk a little bit about that? Because I have a follow-up question for that.
Which one? The State of Black Long Island?
Yeah. So what are your thoughts right now on the State of Black Long Island in general? Not just the program, but...
Like the actual state of Black Long Island?
Yeah.
I feel like we're still where we were, I don't know, decades ago, I feel like. In my personal network, I feel like there is a growing awareness for civic engagement. That's my personal network. So let me just be in my little bubble for a minute.
Okay.
Even with that, I feel like people still aren't connecting the dots between how, when, and why they vote and what is happening in their local environment. So like a workforce question. So because I do workforce at Community Offshore Wind. Mm-hmm. And so the other day I was looking for outcomes, right? So Long Island, we have had all these development projects, and you're aware of them, right? All the housing developments and right here in Mineola, Wyandanch Rising, all of these developments. And how much community benefits are realized from that? And when I say community benefits, I mean like to the Black and brown folks that live in those
community benefit
communities.
agreements.
I don't even know if their agreements were established, but do the communities look any different? Are the stats improving, right? It's unemployment rates decreasing.
What do you think?
Are wages increasing? No. And so when I was at the Urban League, the first set of data we looked at was 2014, and now they refreshed the data. I don't know what year that was from. I don't know if it's 2021, but it's refreshed data, and it's not changed tremendously.
I just think it's like a huge disconnect, with the Black community. We had the opportunity to be in a park 7 days a week this year in Boulder Mac Park, and we just see like that demographic that's completely, unaccounted for, like young women, young men, even a lot of older people. We see that demographic is not accounted for, and that's the grassroots. That's the kind of like vehicle of the culture, and that's why I believe that it's stuck there, because those certain groups that are getting the information are already established. They already kind of situated in the world. Majority of them work for the government. Majority of them have jobs. So it's not really too much going to change. The people that really need to change, they're not getting the information. It's not really being translated to them the way that they understand it. Or, even where it's beneficial for them. So I think that's why everything is just pretty much stagnant and staying the same. The people that's getting the information had the information.
But what is that disconnect, right? Like we talk about this all the time. I would say on Long Island, it's purely the black community, state of black Long Island. There's definitely, it could even be almost 50-50, where 50% of the black community is either middle to higher income on Long Island, meaning that they have jobs making over $100,000.
The median household income for Black Long Islanders is like $70K.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So
household.
I know. So
not for one person.
I know. So if we're breaking that down, though, I'm saying 50-50. That top 50, what I'm saying, is basically keeping that 70
and I think
income.
That too is what's like confusing it, because I don't even think the people that we talk about is even in that range. I don't even think they in that range or even in $20,000 range.
It's
so
that crazy.
Yeah, it's that crazy. So I just like, we never ever gonna get progress unless we attack the root. Like I feel like we got to go at the root and get the information to those people. Not saying that your circle is not receptive to the information, but I believe like if we was to be able to get it down to the trenches, down to the grassroots, the people that really, really need this information, I think we'll start seeing strides and improvement. Like the Spanish community right now is like really a burgeoning demographic, and the North Amityville community, and you could kind of see just the growth. It's more family. It's just a lot more situated people you see. You see them like really riding around in the big trucks with their companies working. It's a family thing. We just stagnated. So I just believe like it's been so long of not getting the information and still not getting it. It's just never really gonna move. I feel like it's a lot of information out there that's being translated, but it's just not getting translated to the people that's supposed to move it. And on the flip side of that, the people that needs the information, is real serious issues going on with them to where it's gonna have a hard time even communicating that to them. So I believe that gotta be addressed too. Like it gotta be like a bridge to where we getting these people the information, but at the same time we getting them the help, because it's like going somewhere where a person been doing something for 50 years and just saying, yo, look, I'm trying to show you a new way. Stop. That's not gonna happen. And it's not a whole thing. It's maybe like a short percent getting that information.
Well, I'm never giving up on black people, because I do my job for black people, period. Oh, we might not. Can we put that in? Black and brown people and all people. I'm never giving up on black people. But I do think, so like we all have our role to play, right? We need people in the seats and in the streets. I say this all the time. And so you guys are doing what you do, and I'm doing what I do. And at some point it has to come together, right? How can I support what you do? How can you support what I do? Some point it has to come together. So, and that's the only way. But I'm never giving up on black people.
But policy and culture again, right? And this is something that is always boggling my mind. There's politics within the black community that's literally keeping the culture down. So
absolutely.
There's like, let's say the top 50% in a way even looks down at the bottom 50%, as if what we would say in the past was systematic racism. But on Long Island, there's a lot of glaring evidence of systematic racism within the black community.
I will call it systematic oppression.
It's called internalized racial oppression.
I will call that. I don't even know what that means, but whatever it is, I'm calling it systematic oppression, because it's like, again, we get the funding for this stuff, like we lobby for these things, and we don't go to the people that we lobbying for. We don't go to the people that we getting this funding for. We talk about youth just being destructive, and it should be like a real state of emergency for our youth, and it's not. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's not happening. So it's like when I hear these things and I hear about like, yo, the culture isn't moving in the direction that the culture is supposed to be moving in, because I don't feel like we're getting the information to the culture.
Well, who's saying that the culture isn't moving?
You just said it.
Oh, okay.
Well, the statistics, right? And this is a big thing. There's actually probably the bottom 50%. I don't want to keep saying it, but I'm just so people can understand this as a listening and watching, honestly. Like,
they're watching?
The majority, this is visual. the influence of our culture is not even just for Black community; it's the whole world at this point. You can see it influencing Asia, Russia. The culture
100%.
affects everyone, but there's still I want to say a grassroots, almost a raw aspect of that bottom 50%. We can say here on Long Island that defines the culture, but is not reaping the benefits of that same exact culture. They're not getting the respect of the energy. We talk about good energy, bad energy. There's a huge part of that culture that is producing great energy, but poverty is coming back. They're not getting that return on investment or return on energy.
Okay, so but how can we harness that?
I mean, that's what I'm saying as far as state of Black Long Island, because we're talking about our specific region. I think it's a combination of obviously access to information, also those that need it most being receptive to the information, but the structural systems, for instance, youth centers, we talk, because this is the most easiest one to talk about. When there's $250,000 going into youth centers in each one of our communities, and it's basically a glorified daycare, how is that benefiting our culture? When you got 14-year-olds fighting every day or arguing with each other that are in the summertime out and about at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when there's a whole facility for them to go to.
And it goes hand in hand, because I don't want people to lose topic of what we talking about. We talking about the culture being moved forward. So we talking about a whole demographic of kids, right? Kids are supposed to be the future. They're supposed to be the fathers. They're supposed to be the mothers. They're supposed to be the next business owners of the world. The next
innovators.
Yeah, the next innovators in our environment, and we're not pouring anything into them. We're just leaving them out there just stagnant. So again, how do we expect the culture to move forward when the kids is there they're on idle time, no information, no programming, no anything. The parents is at work, no programming, no information, no anything. How do we expect the culture to move forward? And that percentage is the one that we're talking to.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, a lot of this goes back to voting, right? Because if you're saying that there's no programs for them, why don't we create programs, right?
Yeah, but there's funding. No, there's funding going into the programs. It's our community that's not running the right.
Who's running the program? Okay, so how do those people get their jobs?
Who? What you mean? Who's get what
like
jobs?
the people that runs the youth centers, as an example. How do they get their jobs?
This is where we talking about as far as like the information, and you just touched on something as far as voting. Our community isn't keen to vote, and that's something that we need to pick up on. That's why we've been really hitting the ground with the grassroots and minority millennials, really trying to bridge the gap between policy and culture so they understand what's going on. But I feel like, again, the information is just not there. We talking about, again, people that are just idle. They not getting the information. They not getting anything. Then we coming to them about voting. That's like speaking a whole different language at that point. When we speaking of what are we voting for, they gonna think about Donald Trump. They gonna think about they don't even really understand the significance of the local elections. They don't understand the significance of a councilman or a town supervisor.
They don't, right? But so we have to close those gaps for them.
I agree that we got to bridge those gaps. But the questions and what we were speaking about is why the culture wasn't moving forward.
But to that point, though, Drew, when we talk about this all the time, we're just putting it out there because this is something that continually needs to be talked about, is why is it not interesting to our culture to understand the power of voting on a local level?
I feel like we never really had no one that was appealing to the people.
That's a great point.
No one could relate to. Like
it's emotional.
Definitely
still an
emotional
factor
and it's
in
an elected official. It's an elected official. That means like the people has to pick that. So it's like when you got somebody and you coming from these neighborhoods, you coming from a Wyandanch, you coming from a North Amityville, you coming from a Hempstead, Freeport, you coming from these places, you want to be able to touch somebody. You want to be able to somebody, yo, I can identify with you. I really feel your pain. They don't even know what's going on. So when you bring in somebody there, and this is just a whole another just disrespect to us, it's just negligence and us not knowing. You're bringing a candidate to represent us. How do you bring somebody to represent our community? That's crazy. We're supposed to pick somebody to represent our community. We're supposed to know somebody that's representing our community. So it's like it's the conversation. It's a bunch of layers in that conversation as far as like why the culture isn't moving forward. I just really think the message into the grassroots got to be there. The message into the grassroots and really tapping in with the kids. If we can't get the youth, we can't really get nothing, because the adults is really pretty much, you know, in their ways. Like you said, your network is like been doing a pretty much of a good job to kind of get that information out there. But they got the information. We need to kind of get to the trenches at this point and mobilize them. Once they're mobilized, I feel like that's when you'll see the change, because you're gonna see kids now being able to go to school in a healthy spirit because their moms got a decent job. The pops isn't out the house no more, so we got good energy now. We not waking up hungry. We not waking up mad because moms is mad because the baby father's locked up or the husband might have left or whatever. It's just good energy. So now we're creating kind of our own community where now Retha's coming to Boulder Mac Park or Wyandanch Park, this prime example, and she's really talking to not saying that you didn't do that already. I'm not saying that you didn't, but you're really kicking it to the kids about Offshore, when also kicking it to the kids about politics, what it means to be an elected official, actually bringing these elected officials to the community and explaining to them, yo, this is what's going on here. This is Steve Ballone. This is our county executive. This is how this is even possible. You feel me? So I feel like once that is kind of like really drilled down to the kids, they really understand that, then that information is kind of transferred to the adults. I think that the culture, the community that we talk about will be mobilized. They'll be able to move. Right now, I feel like they don't got the information.
No, they don't. But every movement needs credible messengers, translators, so that demographic understands what their power. I mean, they have to understand that there's power in them being mobilized and organized, and I don't think people see that.
And that's a whole nother thing. That's the way we gotta go frown upon our culture now, because it's like we frown upon being organized, we frown upon being educated, we frown upon not being physically, inferior to other people. Like, I feel like those are the type of things that we got to shift in our culture. Is like, it's okay to be smart. It's okay to know how to talk and have a dialogue with somebody. You don't have to be like the dominant in every situation. It's okay to sometimes submit and get answers. So again, it's both ways. Like I said, I think the culture that we want has to be receptive of the information, and the people that has the information has to come back down and be willing to tap in with the culture.
And what you just gave were examples of internalized racial oppression, because who says being smart is not cool, or who says
that's just what's going on.
The characteristics that Black people exhibit, who says that those are negative characteristics?
These are the things that we identify with to get through these insecurities.
Yeah, but they came from somewhere.
But this is also like the rawness of a community in general. Like, again, me and Drew talk about this all the time. Like, there'll be conversations where it's like someone's defined as a square. Now, that's in every single culture, right? But it's deeper within our culture, because if you're called a square, that's almost like an impediment. That's almost like you have one arm or something. Like, there's something wrong with you in a way. Now, let's bring it back to the women, though. Women also, it's not just, a dominant male thing. Women also at times
let me
make
turn
that
around
situation
and face you.
a little deeper too, because, no one wants to feel like they're inadequate or they're disrespected. And so I would say on Long Island, especially growing up here, I'm from Long Island, I'm 38 now, I've seen individuals that could have went a very, very straight, educated, would have been very prosperous, successful individual, human being, but had to go a different route just because of the community and the definitions that they might have put on that person. And so they're doing things that are outside of how they were raised. They're acting a certain way just to fit in, to show that they're not soft, to show that they're not a square. These are the things that are, and I would say on Long Island it happen even more. But we've lost a lot of strong intellectual individuals, both men and women. It's happening a lot more now with young women, though. We're seeing that. And I think it has a lot to do with certain aspects of what's happening right now in the industry, the music industry. But those are all real things that need to be talked about.
It's true. I mean, there's always going to be outside forces that influence how people behave. And I think a simple answer, right, is like role models, mentors, other examples of greatness that individuals, no matter what age, need in the community, because to show that there's something else, that there's something different.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
We talked about gentrification. I have an idea right now. We talked about gentrification with Dan. Is a real estate developer, and he kind of explained it in a way where there's different forms of gentrification, where it could be the communities being improved, but the home ownership stays black. Where it's not necessarily gentrification, it's just that we're doing economic development.
Yeah, that's economic
And they also have the opportunity to come back if they decide to come back. He was doing work in Baltimore. Is there such thing as gentrification in a culture? Because if somebody says you're a square or this, that, and the third, isn't that like just building a high-rise luxury apartment building?
It's crazy you said that, because I believe that the culture now you're saying that was gentrified. I believe the culture was gentrified, and a lot of things was like allowed inside of the culture that usually wouldn't fly. I feel like it was gentrified to the point where it's like, this is the culture. It's all in one. The hood, the music, the women, the jewelry, the cars, it's all in one. And anybody could attain this. Anybody could get there with money. And I feel like that's the culture right now. And what we were speaking about with your boy Drake the other day, like, I feel like he's seen that. Like, yo, only thing I gotta do is obtain this, and I'm the man. So I feel like
That's your boy Drake?
this is why.
No, listen.
No,
We're having a conversation about what's going on, what happened between him and Kendrick. And Kendrick's still getting wins, but I don't take. Just got the Super Bowl halftime show.
Our moral compasses is off, and we just absolutely forget. We forget what what it's for, and we lose track. Unfortunately, sometimes we can't get it back. We can't get it back, unfortunately.
No, we have to get it back, because
You think there's hope?
didn't I say I'm never giving up on black people?
That's a very optimistic advocate.
That I am optimistic.
I'm asking a serious question. What's happened with technology?
I'm giving you a serious answer. Like, we need to still stay paying attention. We need you guys still providing the information to the people that you say don't get it, don't understand it, but don't receive it. We need you giving that information to them, and we need folks like me in the roles that I'm in, the good ones of us that are in government, writing good policy, passing good laws. We need all of it.
I'm gonna give another example, and I use this all the time. You know how I feel about Miss Vanessa Streeter. I love Miss Vanessa Streeter, right? She got this group called the Vanettes, right? It's been around for years, probably since before I was
50-some
born.
years.
Yeah, 50-some years. But when I was a teenager, I would start seeing a lot of the girls that went to Vanettes. Not seeing them personally, but I would know it was like they was like on a basketball team or a football team. Yeah. And to this day, you know the distinct difference with Vanette females.
Yes.
The way that they carry themselves, the way that they talk. A lot of them are pursuing careers, whether it's in dance or whether it's just anything else. I feel like Miss Vanessa planted herself there as a role model young for them. And I'm saying to see. You feel me? So if we got more Vanessa Streeters, we got more Retha Fernandez's tapping into the grassroots, it'll be quadruple the Vanettes.
Absolutely. The Vanettes is an institution. So I'm from Nassau, like I told you. And when I moved to Suffolk County, I heard everybody talking about the Vanettes. I was like, what is this? Yeah. And then my niece was in one of the recitals, and I went to the show, and Vanessa does she MCs the show. And I didn't know her then, but I was with Dana, and I was like, and Vanessa was doing her, I call it now the Vanette's voice, right? MCing in her way that she does. I was like, Dana, who is that woman? She is amazing, and she's black. Is this her company? So I was all excited. But it's an institution, and they teach black excellence. And there's a way that you learn, behave, carry yourself if you're a Vanette. And that's why you see it out in the community, and it's like forever. And this started with her mother, right? So we need organizations, institutions like that talking to the kids consistently.
That too, but just how she moved you. Just how you seen her. Yeah. And you say, yo, who is this woman here doing? That's the only thing. They need to see it. They need to see it. This is what I'm talking about, the grassroots, going back into the trenches. So right now, our young girls are looking up to like Glorilla. They looking up to like Sexy Red. They looking up to, that type of stuff, right? So if we got
But I'm grown and I have a filter, so.
Got you. And this is what they need to learn.
And
They
you're
need
processing.
they need to learn that it's a time and a place for everything. I listen to tell them, I listen to Sexy Red. I'm a fan, but this is how we got to move to really conduct ourselves
That's your favorite artist?
Who?
Sexy Red?
No, Sexy Red.
Who's your favorite artist?
My favorite artist right now, I gotta give it up to Fab, man. He's showing us extra
Fab?
love. Yeah, Fab, my favorite artist
Does
right
he
now.
have new records?
He got new records or
Cold Summer.
whatever it is. He showed us extra love at Boulder Mac Park, man. Shout out Fab.
That
he ain't
was
have
fantastic.
To, he ain't have to do none of that he did. He's still posting today.
He's from Brooklyn.
He's from Brooklyn,
I'm just
man.
saying.
Shout out Fab.
So we have to wrap in a few minutes, but I did want to go back to, you mentioned voting. And I think what Drew's saying is really important, especially on a local level, because we're talking about good energy, right? And when you tell people to vote, they say, all right, why, right? What policy? So sometimes it's hard to explain how a local vote can impact the community unless you're talking about, hey, from picking up your garbage to cleaning up your streets to access to local jobs. But also, when you reference Miss Vanessa and the energy that she was exerting to you, that's the same thing that we need with local elected officials. Because if you're not giving the community the opportunity to select their candidate, you're actually taking away their energy. You're taking away any of that emotional energy.
I agree.
Into a local representative or local candidate that can rally, if not 5 to thousands of new voters.
Yeah.
Just purely because of how they move,
Yeah.
of how they talk, and
Yeah.
the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's literally what has to be seen in history. Now that could be
And we're seeing it now with Kamala.
Exactly.
I mean, I had a colleague, 30-something-year-old white man, cisgender from Nebraska, said that the first time he donated to a political campaign was to her campaign. So she moved him in some kind of way.
And that's the best form of politics, especially if the elected official uses that power in the right way. And that's what we really need to advocate more on a local level, because that's why so many young people are not connecting with local politics. Who's the candidate? What are you doing? Where did you come from?
Yeah.
What's your resume?
What's your connection to the community? Like,
Yeah.
what's the?
I mean, even the candidates in Suffolk County that's on the ballot now, do we know who they are?
People can see right through it. So, these are the things that when we talk about policy and culture, we're really talking about how the culture has so much power, it should be able to shift policy.
Okay. So the next discussion should be how we're harnessing the power. First of all, how we get people to realize that they have the power, and then how we harness that.
And that brings us all the way back to your current role, again, within the green economy. So there's a huge week this right now. What's happening? Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Or are you allowed to talk about that? No, you're not, actually. I don't think, right?
Well, when is this going to air?
Oh, yeah, you're right. So, yeah, you can talk a little bit.
So we are participating in New York State's solicitation to generate offshore wind power for the state. We're definitely participating in that. And then what comes along with that, which is the stuff that I get to do, is millions of dollars being invested in disadvantaged community for workforce development and economic development. And I'm glad that I'm in this role because we can really implement it in a way. That's something we didn't talk about. You guys are doing workforce development in what you do. I don't know if you do definitely call it that, but
it is workforce development because it's that early outreach.
no, exactly. And when people think about workforce development, they think about like job training and that's it. But there's so much more that goes into workforce development. And our strategy is really centering the individual person first, rather than thinking about what they need to be trained for, and thinking about where it is that they might want to go in the industry, because everybody doesn't want to go to the same place.
Yeah.
And so we have to create programs to get them there. And then we have to create programs that support them in getting there. So as an example, we did this initiative where we took some students from Brooklyn to a site surveyor's office, and they met with the CEO, and they had this whole day. And there were some kids that didn't go. Do you know why they didn't go? Because they didn't have anything to wear to this thing. So they felt like they couldn't go to this corporate office looking like however it was that they look. And so that's workforce development. People don't understand that, you know, the youth need to feel comfortable participating in these things that they might think is like above them or unattainable. They don't see them in these spaces. So our programs are going to be focused around all of that.
And what part of New York is that? Was this happening?
The event that happened?
No, New York 5.
Oh, Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. So we have a lot of work to do. That's why Community Offshore Wind partners with minority millennials and supports your summit, because you do workforce really well.
Yeah, shout out to Community Offshore Wind. Y'all have been very supportive of our summit. We are the Future Summit, bridging the gap between policy and culture. In 2023, our first year, and also this year, 2024, and we're going to be doing it again, bigger and better. Next year, we've been able to, at this point, touch close to around or impact almost 3,500 students, if not 4,000 students. So
yeah, and who else is doing that in one shot?
No, I mean that's the thing, right? We're trying to make sure that we're innovative with how we're producing good energy with the work that we're doing, that we're making it attractive to youth, to something that they want to cling to actually understand our culture. And we're still learning at the same time, right? This is basically a pivot or a springboard off of basketball, because we played basketball growing up, and Boulder Mac is a huge influence at this point across New York State. And how can we create a pipeline from that energy, from that same exact demographic that unfortunately is usually the disadvantaged community that we're talking about in these sweet back rooms? How can we take that DAC into jobs and careers? And how can we be a incubator, so to say? If we have 5,000 people at Baltimore Park, we want to get at least 100 into these jobs.
Yeah, I mean, you do it in partnership with individuals that are in the ecosystem. We got some good people now in workforce, in with some of these construction companies, the contractors, the offshore wind developers. We got good people that in New York State. We got good people in the ecosystem. We can do it. I'm never giving up on Black people.
I hope not. It is a sense of urgency though right now.
No, it is.
We got to pick it up a lot faster.
Okay. No pressure.
We got to pick it up.
Talk to your friends in New York State.
We're trying to do as much as possible. That's the whole goal. And that's really the whole platform for this show. We didn't get too much into the civics of it, but that's a big thing as well, is, teaching civics and really getting young people to understand the power of being civically engaged and the doors that open up for you when you really know what's going on and you can communicate
we're at time,
we got a couple
right?
minutes.
But so for our workforce strategy, I was looking for baseline numbers on like I was talking about earlier, who got jobs from these developments. And I went to the IDA website to see if there was anything. And there's nothing around the local jobs, definitely not around race, gender, ethnicity, anything about who actually got those jobs. But they say that there's jobs created, I don't know, 13,000 jobs created in 2022 or something like that on Long Island. From IDA projects. And I'm like, okay, so we have no numbers to even really track and see if we are going to be successful in what we're doing. And then I went back to how even these decisions get made, how IDA projects get selected and funded and what they track. And it's the IDA, right? The board? Mm-hmm. Who's on the board?
Well, that's the industrial development agencies. Ironically, we just had, again, a conversation with a developer, and the way the economy works is supposedly they're not even able to develop without any type of pilot agreements because it's just that bad. Land costs is just insane.
Okay, so, right. But who's making these decisions? And so for me, it was I was looking at the IDA board, and the IDAs, on a county level, they get appointed by the county executives, elected officials. They get approved by the legislature.
Yeah, I mean, this is where...
Who are the legislators? The people that we vote for?
This is why it's so important to be politically engaged.
I know. That's my point.
Yeah. Policy and culture. There we go. Well, we have to wrap it up. Miss Fernandez, do you want to leave off some uplifting words or remarks about the industry, about in general some of the work that you have going on?
She never giving up on black
Never
people.
giving up.
Never giving up on black
That's
people.
a quote. We gotta make Theo, make sure we push that right there.
I'm never giving up on black people.
Never giving up on black people.
There's so much. I don't know. Stay connected. Acknowledge your power. Because you have the power.
You were at DNC, right? Okay, you didn't want to get into that.
Oh my God, that was the most amazing experience ever.
Yeah.
Can we do another podcast on DNC?
Yeah, we'll talk about that another time.
All right, because that's another thing about an industry where we are not in. So I was volunteering and I was in the writer's room with the speechwriters. These are Obama speechwriters, Biden speechwriters, Clinton speechwriters. It was like about 17, 20 of them. How many were black? Ask me.
How many?
One.
Yeah, that's wild.
One Hispanic that I could see, and like 3 South Asian. And these are all young people. They went to Harvard, Yale, they're all Ivy League trained, and they're like in this amazing career. And I'm like, what is the pathway for our kids to get into doing something like this? What's the pathway for our kids to get into lobbying and get paid millions of dollars to lobby? Like, what's the pathway?
Yeah, and that's all relationships.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, but it's race and class also.
Yeah.
Because these young kids start off with interning in congressional people's offices for no pay, but they don't have to get paid, right? Because their parents can provide them with what they need. Our kids with less money can't take advantage of free internships necessarily.
Yeah.
So that's another pipeline that I'm looking at because we need to be there.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate
Thank
you
you
coming
for
on
having
the
me.
Policy and Culture platform and a lot of amazing work that's going on right now in the offshore wind industry. And again, very grateful, thankful, and looking forward to another conversation in the near future.
Yep, I'll be here
Let's do it.
for the people.